Woman Up is a podcast talking to self-identifying women and non-binary artists, creatives, art critics, feminist historians, activists and more. This series was conceived by Desperate Artwives founder Amy Dignam in collaboration with me, Susan Merrick. Desperate Artwives is a platform established in 2010 for women artists who are also mothers and carers. Amy's work focuses on domestic disorder, unsteady identity, power and dysfunction. And I'm an artist interested in feminism, language, power and access. In this platform, we share conversations with women that inspire us and our work, whilst producing a long-form content of resources for other people to access. Hello and welcome to Woman Up, the podcast series by Desperate Artwives. I'm Susan Merrick, and today I'm interviewing Lauren Craig. Lauren is a social media shy, internet curious, cultural futurist based in London. Her practice draws on her experiences as an artist, curator, researcher, birth, death doula, and celebrant. She has founded and directed 5 creative organisations with a background in ethical, social, and environmental entrepreneurship and reproductive justice. Her practice moves with slow depth between performance, installation, art writing, moving image, and photography. Through archival socialisation, she elevates lived experience as a tool for reframing past and present underexposed narratives. Through collaborative live engagement, Craig invites us to presence conditions for ethical cultural memory. Hello and welcome, Lauren.
Hello, thank you so much for reading that bio.
No problem, it's amazing. I've been really excited to look at your work and see everything that you've been doing over your practice and everything that you're doing now. It's really exciting.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, so coming on to hearing about your work, I first heard about your work through Althea Greenan at the Women's Art Library. She told Amy and I about your work with X Marks the Spot. So I'd love for you to start by sharing a bit about that collective, what your goals were, and what kind of led you to that work as well.
Oh, that's a great question. Like, what led me to that work? So by the time I'd met the X Marks the Spot members, at that point in time, I didn't know that we were going to do anything like we did. I was on my 3rd social enterprise, which was called Field, and it was a 3rd space in the now Brixton Village. So Field existed to make a connection between alternative therapies, community retail, sustainable fashion, art. It was a gallery, and I curated the exhibitions and the international residency program, artist residency program. But during that time, through the doors came Ego, who also then introduced me to Gina and Zai and Mystique. So I was holding the space for different types of organising. And at that time, Ego was running the Lambeth Women's Project, which was then invited to be part of a project at Studio Voltaire. And it was at that point that my space, Field, at Brixton Village, had become too successful, basically, and we couldn't afford to stay there. So not just my project, but the success of re-energising the space had become popular and was the precursor to what we know as Brixton Village now. So the normal cycle of gentrification and exploitation of spaces within London. So yeah, Brixton Village was a Grade 2 listed building for its cultural diversity, which is arguable as whether it represents that now. So I couldn't afford to stay, basically, because it had become champagne and fromage, and I moved to Lambeth Women's Project, and that was how I was then invited to be part of the X Marks the Spot. We kind of came together for the project to respond to the call out from Studio Voltaire, and yeah, that's how it started. So we somehow morphed into, so we're talking in like 2011. So X Marks the Spot will be celebrating our 10-year anniversary this year, jointly with commemorating the passing of Eula Barron, one of our members. And we're going to do those things in unison. I think it's something that we do well, honouring the past and honouring the life of women that have gone before us and sacrificed for us. So we're going to try and find a way to do that in December, alongside all the other things that are happening. But X Marks the Spot became a Blackwomen and non-binary art and archival research collective. But we quickly moved into the curatorial. So we were already curating exhibitions by the second year. The second year in, basically, co-curating with Louise Shelley at that point for exhibitions at Tate Tanks, and then co-curating ourselves with exhibitions at Studio Voltaire. My work was very much focusing on ritual and performance as a way to cleanse art spaces and institutional decay, and to find a way to better conditions for artists, especially artists like ourselves, Black women and non-binary people. So the Studio Voltaire experience was a great one for us in a lot of ways, because we got to work with the work and archive of Jo Spence. So with both myself, Mystique and Zai, all having photography in our background, that was fantastic. And then the combination of the social and political and body, just there was something in us for all, there was something in it for all of us, especially coming together around health, which I was really into and practicing at that time. And we took it live. We developed relationships with both Terry Dennett and Rosie Martin, who were crucial to the life, career and work of Jo Spence. And as I've said, we are very concerned and driven by honouring those that have passed away, as much as living artists. And so it was very important for us not just to kind of memorialise Jo, and to work and bring in Terry, who was alive at the time, sadly passed away now, and Rosie, yeah. So that was fun stuff.
You worked with the Women of Colour Index during that time in the Women's Art Library as well, is that right? That's right, yeah. So it wasn't enough for us just to work with what was becoming popular in Jo's work. We wanted to dig deep into the archive and to look at the kind of interconnections and the relationships that made Jo's work. We were astonished that Rosie Martin was not being put to the forefront, because the pieces that had become very commercially viable in Jo Spence's work were actually co-authored, co-made by Rosie, who's a living artist. And so along that political line, we went to the Women's Art Library, and that's where we delved into the Jo Spence archive there and met Althea, which was great. Althea's fantastic. I really love the way that my daughter thinks about Althea. She always says that, oh, Althea's a glittery fairy in the library. And Althea's dissertation is really sparkly, and my daughter was just enamored. She was just like, oh my gosh, you can make books like this. And Althea's got some kind of magic dust going on in that library, and so she couldn't get rid of us. Not that she wanted to, but through that relationship, we were able to knock out a string of firsts, basically, in how the library was able to interact, to react, to socialise, to publish. So it was a lot of fun. And yes, through Althea's relationship with the Women of Colour Index and Rita Keegan, she introduced us to that collection. And she was like, yeah,
I've been waiting for you guys. Like, this is time to dust it off. Like, yeah, you guys need to look at this. And then we were all just like, wow, this is it. This is it for us. And with the little resources that we were able to draw down from the Gillian Eleanor Foundation, we were able to start picking away. And I always, with these things, there's never enough time and never enough money. But we were able to, I mean, I like to describe it as create an invitation for more people to come in, you know, to just a little chip of access that can kind of, you can get your foot in and like wedge open. And that was always more important for us. So not just for access to be for us, but to be for others. And yeah, so we did loads of things, like It's Hard to Remember, like Lift Festival. We did things at Conway Hall, you know, but we most importantly published the Human Endeavour, a creative finding aid for the Women of Colour Index. So that was, a collective publication. And I like to think of it again as an invitation for people to visit. But it was more than that, in that it was also like a roll call and a tribute. I see in naming and just pulling out like snippets in, you know, for what we could collate for a small publication. It was also around that time that Althea drew my attention to slides. The slides are within the collection, which at a really difficult time within the collective, it was able to kind of draw me back to more therapeutic processes that have been embedded within my own practice in relation to photography. And I was hooked. At that time, Althea's research, PhD research, was based around slides as well. So yeah, I was hooked on slides. I was hooked on that light box, and slides have now become like a really pivotal point within my own research and looking at the work of women artists. And it was through that relationship with Althea that I was then introduced to the women's work group, which is with Catherine and Rachel and Amy. And through their collaboration with the British Art Network, I was able to dig a little bit deeper into thinking about collective practice, and to share a little bit the type of work that X Marks the Spot had done in the past, along with Gina. And it was from that I was able then to find out more about the British artwork, and now I'm on the steering group for the British artwork because of that. And it was also through that relationship with Althea I was introduced to Helena through that women's work that I did, and was invited to lead a feminist duration reading group session, which it wasn't a reading group, I guess. And I...
Has that happened just this year, Lauren?
Sorry?
Has that happened just this year?
Yeah, that was just last week. That was last week. I forgot what I was going to tell you now.
Sorry, I interrupted your flow.
It's all right. I've got such bad short-term memory. It's just so easy to forget. I was invited by Helena to do a session for the Feminist duration reading group, and like working with the team. Like Lily was really supportive and instigating, and Beth supporting me to do something. That was a long time coming, because I was invited just before lockdown in 2020. We just did it last week. And so I wanted to bring to that circle something that I've been practicing since 2015, which is restorative writing circles. I started writing circles and journaling with people, with birthing people and families. And these circles I would bring together at places like we just turn up to the Battersea Arts Centre or the Tay or the Black Cultural Archives and just with the kids just take up space and write. So yeah, writing was something that I found that women at this time could do, even if it was writing in the way of making a voice note. Still that idea of kind of rapping, the kind of rapping that goes on in your mind, a way of documenting that, a way of journaling during that period of time, I found like immensely therapeutic, and was able then to make relationships with the, like mother artists like Adicia Howe and Ashish Canterbury, who we've remained friends and co-conspirators until now. So yeah, I brought that format and methodology to the Feminist Duration Reading Group as a restorative writing circle based around something called a concept called desire lines, taken from the architectural term, but moving into writing from the position of the tension between not having enough time to read and just having to write because you're pissed off, and that's really all you can do. So the methodology was designed from there, and it was a lot of fun, and it was like really quite overwhelming in like what people produced. It was like only 30 minutes of writing split up into sections of 10 minutes. And the other prompts were responses that I'd made, works that I'd made and had been placed throughout the methodology to prompt certain writing about temporalities within archival pasts, presents and futures. And it was incredible, like 8 to 10 pages, people were like breaking the chat with too much text. And it was just, yeah, it's amazing. So part of that process is to do a part 2 and publish. So there'll be publications as a result of the sessions, and possibly even a part 3. So this kind of way of working has also been supported by Eastside Projects, who helped me in commissioned me really to deliver a similar restorative session called Future Truths. And in those sessions, I work with artists and people in the cultural industries to look at forward planning and really designing their trajectories, like designing their futures, where they want to be for their practice, becoming unstuck, understanding the reasons why. And that's something that I've got plans to take around now to different arts organisations, independent as well. So it's been quite a journey, really. And like as a result of becoming part of like the research groups with the British artwork, we've got now designing like a fugitive project, which is a digital garden. And it's a really it's been really transformational for me, because out of something that had become quite damaging, we've been able to design this new project that is creating a workbook, really a resource pack for looking at like intersectional care and security within the cultural industries. So it's really exciting because it's allowing me, alongside Helen Starr and Jack Tan and Pauline de Sousa and others, Salma, Lisa Kennedy, Janine Francois, there's others as well, sorry if I haven't remembered them all. But it's allowing us to well, I can't speak for us all, but it's allowing me to fuse all these different parts of understanding, building alternative and disruptive living systems, understanding business, and unraveling and designing structures that are healthy and sustainable, as well as looking at caring and other mothering, with people and nature as one. And looking at how we can build insecurity for the ongoing sustainability of the cultural industries. So it's really fascinating, and I'm like just forever inspired with the expertise that all the different people bring. It's really cool. So I'm looking forward to that, and that should be coming about in December. So yeah.
You've mentioned during a chat about your full practice there, which is incredible, and so what's the word? It's just got a beautiful flow. So everything everything you've described, it kind of flows really naturally into the next thing and what you do. You've mentioned a few times kind of the entrepreneurial side of things that you set up, but always with this focus on culture and ethics and sustainability. You've had loads of experience on that. Where did that come from, and did that kind of come as part of your art practice, or was it something separate?
I'm never sure that anything's separate in terms of art, because it's life for me, life and death. And how I got into that whole thing was through death. So I was trying then to understand like how the social elements or disparities, or the disparities within like social health and the frameworks within drivers to crime or violent street crime and poverty were made up. And I got into that in 2001, and I experienced a multiplicity of murders due to violent street crime. And I, at that point, started something called Petal Tank, which was using photography as a transitional tool for trauma that people were experiencing, that I was experiencing, friends and family. And this photographic process was about bringing negatives to light through darkroom photography. And that's when I got also attracted to flowers and the use of flowers in art. At that moment in time, also, I come from a really creative family, and my brother was already very established in the music industry. So I was able to access like musicians, global musicians, of which I took portraits and did like behind the scenes work for. And I used that money to then buy equipment and to work with people who'd experienced trauma through gun and knife crime, to work through looking up and kind of shooting up and through what was going on, and also create and reframe situations that they were in, and to create new visions for the future as well. And as you said, that process became natural. Like I had to make money. There wasn't any patronage, there wasn't any rich parents, there wasn't any money coming from anywhere else. And so, that kind of process of looking at ethics and creating some form of sustainability came in that way. So using the money through popular culture, through what was in some respects quite empty, but in other respects super creative, and putting it into areas that really needed it. And it's weird because I started an archive at that time as well in 2001. So I was about 19, because I knew that the art world was not going to take interest in what I had to say or what I had to do. because I knew what was commercially viable in terms of photography, and I knew that what I was doing wasn't. But I understood that I needed to document these murders because they weren't even making the news, and that I needed to make evidence, and also to make it real, that it was happening, that it actually was happening, and to go through that process myself as well, of transformation, of like bringing those negatives to some point of equilibrium. And one of those images now, her story, will be shown at the New Contemporaries later in the year. So yeah, so it's a funny cycle.
Yeah, really powerful. I think that maybe that's coming out around the same time that you're bringing in this restorative care practice as well around writing.
It's weird, you know, because yeah, it's kind of all just interconnected and has like strange roots, like kind of rhizomatic formations like underneath, because it's interesting with something like New Contemporaries, because this is often people who've just graduated, and I am just going to graduate for my first time at art school, and from the syllabus project, thank you, which has been fun, but of course it's an alternative art school.
Good.
And yeah, kinda, yeah, no, definitely good, but yeah, I guess art school's a whole different conversation. But I guess like with Petal Tank and the kind of photographic interest, again, was like doubled with the interest in flowers. And that led me to kind of establish a second social enterprise that had a cultural, social and environmental link in 2003. And that really was like looking at the sustainability of the cut flower industry and how people were exploited, women actually mainly exploited, and their reproductive systems exploited through the industrialization and ever fast growing capitalization of cut flowers. And so I was able then to siphon money from big banks like Santander, Royal Bank of Scotland, Lloyds TSB as clients, and use that money to create installations. I brought about the term floral installation to talk about this type of work. And through that work, I was able to then, you know, write rationales and messages that would go into the, you know, the corporate pamphlets at these big do's. And I also brought about something called floral donation, which is now a part of, an end part, or for me, maybe the beginning part of a living business model that is used now just as a sole business model for organisations out there that use flowers, reuse and upcycle flowers that have been used for designs for parties and events. And yeah, these ideas were taken to Chelsea Flower Show by my then mentor, and the Royal Horticultural Society took them on, and now donate plants and flowers that are used in Chelsea Flower Show into the community, which obviously for centuries or however long it had been going, have only gone to people that were able to access highly bred plants, whether that be the sponsors or the gardeners or whoever, but it definitely wasn't going to be the community. And that came off of a project that I did whilst at Field. But yeah, that's really, really cool. So that people can still, if they want to, have traditional looking designs, like floral designs, but knowing that whatever, if they need to use Oasis, that it's going to be biodegradable. Like that's super cool.
It's really amazing to me, Lauren, that you have, in your work and practice over this like 20-year period, over 20 years, you've made these like massive impacts, like massive social impacts on your local community, but wider than that, nationally, and sounds like potentially globally as well. And yet you also have these really beautiful relationships in terms of your doula clients, where you're working individually. How long have you worked as a doula, and how does that practice of care with individuals and families, how does that? I can see, I know it relates and links to your art practice, but how do you make it work, I guess? Because so many of us as women, we have more than one way of working. Sometimes that's for financial reasons. Other times it's for interest, for whatever else. Often it's financial reasons. How do you make that work, and how does it work? How's that flow go?
I don't know if it works. I don't know if it does. It kind of just is. It kind of just is. I think, again, it goes back to kind of not having like a kind of hierarchy of how things are. I think that because I don't think about the importance of things pitted against each other, then they're allowed to just exist in the temporality and the spatiality that they need to. So I think flow, is a good word in some ways. Maybe like a workflow. I think it's this maybe a good way to look at it. But I don't really know how it works. I think that I didn't really understand like what a doula was, to be honest with you. I didn't know that it was something that you did. But as I told you, I started Field in 2009. But prior to that, I had already started to train in like various different modalities within like complementary therapies. And some of which I was really happy to do because I hadn't understood why I didn't just do it a long time ago. Like I was invited through bursary to the Schumacher College, and in that time it was something called Ethical Pioneers, in that there's 16 in the world, and it was amazing. I was just like, why the hell did I ever go to university? That was like so difficult. Like, this is how I want to learn. These are the kind of experiences I want to have, like learning experiences I want to have. And like, I'm so connected to those people. And it was actually one of the people on the course, Margarita Belandi, who said to me, like, Lauren, you're a doula, right? I was like, what do you mean? I guess because I was already like using traditional medicinal, therapeutic and spiritual teachings from my mum and from like my ancestors, that I kind of fell into it naturally. Like my mum's born in St. Thomas, which is in the east of Jamaica, and it's like feared to be the Obia capital. Obia being the traditional medicine and spiritual practices, because of the leftover colonization of the mind. People place hierarchies on religious practices, with Christianity and Catholicism being the top, and with things like Obia being evil. Obviously not everyone in Jamaica, but this is a kind of residue, a mental residue. And so I kind of was using these things just because it was normal for me. But then I started to actually do training, and people would come to me and say, Lauren, I'm pregnant. Can I use this oil? Or, can I still go and have a massage? And I'd think, you know what? I don't know. I don't know, and you're pregnant, so like, just give me a moment and I'll go and find out. But I absolutely adored the research. Like, I loved finding out, and I just kind of then just became even more connected to the ideas of us as being part of nature, like an equal part, and how, like, having worked with the reproductive parts of plants, now working with the reproductive plants of people, it just kind of was like, wow, this is so good. And so then I started to just do loads of research, and I loved it. And it was Margarita, that said to me, Lauren, you know, you're a doula. And I said, what's that? She was like, it's an actual thing. Like, you can go and train and like do it. And I was like, okay. And so she introduced me to who she had trained with, and I went and started training. But I guess I'd started practicing around 2009. And then it just was strange, because when I went to, strange in a good way, because when I traveled to Brazil after closing field, went to lick my wounds, I ended up being in a natural birth center, and the same in Bali. So I ended up just being able to witness how things can happen outside of the structures that I knew. And then, I just, I came back, and then I think it was like, I don't know, maybe like 22 babies or something crazy seemed to just start popping up. Maybe it was also my age at that time. It was like baby having age. And they just started keep on coming. And I was just involved in like different capacities. And then in 2015, I started Doula Arts, which was like, I think the 5th now social enterprise. And so, as I said to you before, restorative writing circles. And you asked me, like, how does it sit? How does that caring sit with families against other things? Well, I think it just kind of fits in a way. It just does. And I think that it was quite soon that I realized, again, that there's kind of like a fine line between birth and death, and that circle of life, again, just spoke to me. And I think soon after that, I understood that I probably needed to look more towards death and how to understand this fine line, how to tread this fine line, because I was already experiencing death again and needing to have an understanding of my own emotions and my own history in order to work partly in a protective nature of others. And so that's when I started to look into like having a deeper understanding of what a full spectrum doula means, and started to look into what being a deaf doula means. And that also led me to becoming a celebrant, because I was being asked to attend these ceremonies, asking to co-design these kind of ceremonies. And it just became equally as pertinent as everything else, really, to find a way to do it, find a way to turn up when asked, find a way to share or like make, produce new forms of knowledges, like for the celebrations of today. Like how is it that we commemorate? How is it that we celebrate today? What is it that we need to do that?
It sounds like, as well, all through your practice, in every aspect of it. I like in your in one of your bios that I read, you called it a sprawling practice, and I like that term. But I think in everything you do, it sounds like you create these incredibly safe spaces, and that will be why you're successful with your social enterprises, your writing practice, your, you know, coming together in groups, but also your doula work, if you can create these safe spaces for people to be in and to be present in, it's a really special thing.
Oh, thank you. I mean, I hope so. And I think presence in is something like really important to me. And if I can do that, if I can allow people to feel that I am turning up for them, like 100+%, that's really important. Yeah, I would like to hope that I can do that.
So we've talked about you doulaing with other people for birth and death. I know you're a parent yourself, Lauren. How have you found parenting kind of interweaving with your practice? Is it something that's made it harder? Is it something that's made it transformative? Is it something that's improved it? Where do you stand on that?
Yeah, I mean, I really would like to say that I have done a good job in creating a good and supportive network for myself, but I actually was too focused on the outside and other people, I think. And I didn't do a good job in surrounding myself with people to support me. I was surrounded in people that I was the supporter of. Which has not been completely negative, because, you know, there's different cycles of life, and some of those people that I supported as clients have become friends and supporters. And as I said before, some of the hugely supportive people in my life came from the writing circle. Like Adisia Howe has been, you know, an ongoing creative artist and supporter. But actually, I think that the setup, the organizational structures and the kind of hierarchies within the cultural industries are detrimental to the creativity of carers. I'm a sole carer, and I just think it was pretty much impossible. I wasn't able to continue running, excuse me, until pretty much like last year, when my daughter went to nursery. I was able to start getting up and running in a kind of more developed way. Maybe developed's not the right word, but I was able to kind of just have a little bit more time, really, to get back onto things. But I didn't find it a kind environment. I didn't find people who were open to me working in a way that was healthy for me. I didn't find I was fitting in a lot of the women's groups that had been set up and that were good and supportive networks for other women mother artists. I didn't feel I was able to be included. But I didn't have the capacity to start anything else. Because usually that's my answer to everything, you know, like I can't find it. I need it to be in a way that, you know, is kind of like this, so I'll do it. But, you know, with...
That's what I've done the last 5 years as well.
See what I mean? But with a small human being, you're kind of like, not sure how this is going to go, in terms of my capacity to do more. And so I just think in my own little way, I would just turn up in the way that I could best and find a way to allow, a little bit like a rock in a river, you know, I just turn up and then people would just have to flow around and find a way round, because I wasn't going to change, as stubborn as that stone. This is who I am. And having produced a small human being, yeah, it's transformational. Like internally, I feel that it has changed everything. But, you know, in some other ways, it doesn't change who you are. And I think that I was lucky with the bonds that I'd made, and that, you know, with things like X Marks the Spot, with the Rita Keegan Archive project, the Women's Art Library, like it didn't matter to them. And yeah, I'm grateful to have those bonds where people were like, come and do this, like, or, you know, what are you thinking? What are you doing at the moment? Like, still interested, as opposed to kind of just falling off the invite list of so many other artists and art organizations.
I see. I'm shocked by that, but I don't know why I am, because we hear it all the time. But it's still, I think it surprises me every time. I became an artist after being a parent, so I didn't have that comparison. I've only seen everybody else who has all the, you know, the wide experience prior to coming to parenting and caring, and so they see that massive change, whereas I've just been ignored. That's not totally, but yeah.
Yeah, it's not an easy road.
No, but we stand together and make change.
For sure.
Yeah. Oh, it's been amazing to talk to you, Lauren.
Thanks to Alfia, we got a chance.
Yay.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and I'm excited to see. I'm going to be keeping an eye on your work and seeing what you're doing and seeing if I can come and join in anything as well. Thank you so much, Lauren. It's been amazing to talk to you and hear about all of your practice.
Thanks. No, thank you so much. Yeah, it's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure to share.
You've been listening to Woman Up, the podcast series by Desperate Artwives in collaboration with me, Susan Merrick, and in association with the Women's Arts Library at Goldsmiths.